Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Psych 265 Research in Psychology Online. This is Professor DePaulo, and today I'm going to be talking about how to write the title, abstract, and the reference section for your APA style manuscript. So, if you go into assignments, as you see here, click on assignments, it'll bring you to this page here where I have all the different parts of the paper, and at the bottom you'll see writing the title, abstract, and references, and you also see the submission where you can submit your paper as a PDF file. So click on the instructions as a PDF here, and let's open it up. And so basically, let's first start with the title page. The title page should contain the title of the paper, the author's name, and the institutional affiliation. So the first thing you want to start with is the title, the actual title of the paper. It should be no more than 12 words in length. And it should not contain abbreviations or filler words, basically. There's no one correct way to write the title, but the title should convey the meaning of the paper. So if you're doing the paper on COVID-19 related health behaviors and traits that link to COVID health related behaviors, you can talk about simply that, psychological correlates of COVID-19 health behavior, or you can talk about something related to your hypotheses, like the role of empathy and anxiety and attachment, all those different variables we looked at in terms of, social distancing or, following protocols, wearing masks. Uh, but our paper is basically on COVID-19 health related behaviors and the clinical correlates uh, or psychological correlates or relationship between these psychological traits and COVID-19 health behavior. There's no right or wrong way to write the title, so come up with something that's about the study, that's 12 words or less, and then it should be centered in the, if you open up your Word document or your word processor, whatever word processor you're using, and then you can just put it in the sort of center, but kind of towards the middle, a little bit above the midline of the paper, like it's shown here in this diagram, and then write out the title at the top. Capitalize all the major words of the title, so capitalize all the words except for like of, or with or the. Those words are not really impactful in terms of communicating the title, so they don't get capitalized, but everything else does. So beneath that, you want to make sure this is double spaced. So beneath that title, you're going to put your name right under below the title. So your author's name, that's you, full name, and obviously you don't use titles, but that's not an issue right now. And below your author's name, your name, you're going to type the institutional affiliation, which is Borough of Manhattan Community College. And then if you want, you could put even below that City University of New York. And that's it for that part, for the title and the institutional affiliation, the name. Then one other thing you need to do is you need to write running head. So in the margin, so you have this header, right? You have a footer too for each page. But in the header, you want to write the word running head like this. Only the R in running is capitalized. And then you're going to write your short title here. And the short title could be something like that. if my title is the psychological correlates of COVID related behavior or COVID health behavior, I can just write the psychological correlates. Now, I don't want to see every paper with the same title. Make up your own title that relates to the paper. But make sure there's running head after the words running head, colon, space. Make sure it's all capitalized. Okay, and then on subsequent pages, you would put the short title, right? The running head, which becomes known as a short title. You go put it in the header of subsequent pages when you put the page numbers down. Now, that's not that important right now, but if you were submitting a true manuscript, if you were trying to get it published, you would want to have this running head, and you'd want to have the short title on the subsequent pages, like page 2, page 3. You'd have this in the top right hand corner with the page number. But I'm not requiring you to do that. You can do that. It's the best style. But I'm not really talking about headers and short titles right now. I want to focus on the basics, which is the different parts of the manuscript. And this is part of the title page. So I want you to put this running head and the abbreviated title here. And then somewhere in the middle of your paper, you're going to write the title of my psychology. Actually, you're not going to write this word for word, but you're going to write your own title here. And then you're going to center it. All right, whatever your title is. Do not write the title of my psychology paper on your submission, because I think I'll go crazy if you write this. I think I'll lose my mind if I see everybody writing the title of my psychology paper as the title. No, put your own title there. Like I said, less than 12 words that conveys the meaning of the paper. And the shortened version of it is the running head. Okay, the running head has to be in all caps here. And then double space, obviously. Put your name. If I put my full name, and then my institution, if you want to put City University of New York, you can do that too. And then you're done. Title page. Very easy. It takes literally 5 minutes to do. It's gonna, you have to make up the title and then just format it just like this. Obviously, don't put my name, don't put the title of my psychology paper, put your own name, put your own title there, and the rest of it's fine. And the shortened version of the title would be in the running head here. So hopefully that's clear enough. Now, that's the easy part for this assignment. That should only take you 5 minutes. The hardest part, or one of the more tricky parts of the whole manuscript, is writing the abstract. And there's a formula here for it. You can kind of tweak it a bit, like if you're writing your own publication manuscript up. But this is the formula that I generally go with because it's the simplest one to follow and it conveys the most information. But basically, the abstract is a very brief summary, no more than 200 words in length, and it depends on the journal you're submitting it to. So some journals want 150 words. Some journals can take 200 words. So really you have to check with the journal that you're submitting your manuscript to how long the abstract can be. But I'm going to put it at between 150 to 200 words because that's what it generally is, somewhere in that range. And you're going to write the word abstract, at the top of the next page. So it goes on a separate page right after the title page. The next page says abstract at the top and center it, regular font, right? And then you're going to write the abstract using this format. So the first 2 or 3 sentences should talk about the purpose or the main objective of the study. Now, this is the study that we did as a class. This is the survey that we did as a class that you filled out online. And I analyzed the data for you and you're writing up. This is not based on the research that you read about. This is based on our class study. So 2 to 3 sentences, what was the objective of our class study? So You can get that from the introduction because that's where you should have been writing about the main objectives of the study at the beginning of the introduction. Then the next one or two sentences is a brief description of the methodology. That's really brief because we just did a survey. So you could put stuff in there that that a survey was conducted online, that measured, um, or you could put the number of subjects, 19 participants, 17 females, 2 males, completed a survey online measuring psychological traits, and you can briefly mention those if you want. The correlation between the different psychological traits we measured, anxiety, attachment, empathy, etc., and COVID health behavior, which involved mask wearing, social distancing, uh, going out, and interacting with people during the pandemic. So the stuff we talked about in the survey, one or two sentences on that. That's it. Very, very brief methodology. Then you want one or two sentences talking about the findings. Do not put statistics in this. So do not put any of the statistics that I did in the abstract. Just give me sort of what you wrote at the beginning of the discussion, which is a summary, a non-statistical summary of the research findings. So what happened? You might want to mention the correlation, there with empathy and mask wearing, because that's our major finding. So talk about that. One or two sentences. And then finally, one or two sentences about the conclusion. So based off our research, what do we know? What are the next steps? Once again, that focuses on the discussion. What's the take-home point of the study? Well, there's a lot of take-home points. You can even mention the limitations here in a sentence if you want. But what do you take away from the study? Besides, we didn't have enough participants. Obviously, you could mention that, but you can also mention the impact of the study. We're studying COVID health behavior, and based on our results with empathy, what does that tell us about COVID health behavior? What does that tell us about society in general? Don't go too broad, but give me a good one or two solid sentences of the take-home message from the study, and that's your abstract. It is tricky to write because you've written the whole paper up to this point. This is always the last thing you're going to write is the abstract. It's always at the end. And it's important because, when you did your Google Scholars and your psych info searches, psych articles, whatever, PubMed, whatever you looked at, whatever database you looked at, when you do a search, you get back the abstracts. And so before you're going to read an article, you're going to read the abstract to see if it's related to what you're going to do. And so the abstract, besides the title, obviously you read the title first, but the abstract is the most important part really of the study because you're trying to convince people this is what I did, this is interesting, and this is what I found. And you have to write it very concisely. And that's what most people are reading as they do the literature review. As they're looking for previous research, they're reading the abstract and they're saying, do I want to read this article? Could I use this article in my research or not? So if your abstract is poor, chances are people are not going to read your manuscript. They're not going to read your publications. So you need that abstract to really be solid, convey the evidence in a concise manner, not to be wordy, right? Not to be full of jargon, but to just to get the person, the reader's attention right away and get them to say, yes, this is interesting research. I want to read this article. I want to read their study. So it's a challenge, but and I understand you're not going to write like a great abstract, an amazing abstract at the beginning. It's hard for me to write an amazing abstract, and I've done enough writing, and it's tricky. Um, it requires a lot of organization, requires work, to be put in to revise it. But give me something that conveys the study. When I read this abstract, I want to see that what happened during the study, and then I'll give you some suggestions, and then you can do the revisions. for the final paper, which is coming up soon. I've given you an example of an abstract here. This is the effect of job stress on clinical health outcomes. And it starts out with this importance of the topic here. Approximately 15 to 25% of the U.S. working population is classified as high risk for job stress. Obviously, we all have job stress. The type of stress is known to exert a psychological toll on workers. However, less is known about the impact of job stress on physical health and how the current findings translate to clinically relevant outcomes in everyday life, such as susceptibility to common cold. So these three sentences introduce the problem and describe why the problem is important. So a lot of people have job stress, and job stress exerts psychological tolls, which is important, but it also exerts physical toll on people. That's why it's important. In an ongoing daily diary study, 68 adults, 37 females, completed measures of job stress and upper respiratory infection symptoms every day for 8 weeks. So that's the methodology. They had 68 adults, and they looked at the relationship between job stress and the common cold, you know, rhinovirus. You're stuffy, and especially in the winter. So once again, that's a confound right there. Is it winter time? Is it winter time? You're more, you're inside more. You're more likely to develop symptoms of a cold. Um, so does job stress work have more of an impact in the winter or the summer? That's another question that can be raised. But this is talking about the methodology here. So they looked at people, their job stress, and they correlated it with their, upper respiratory symptoms for 8 weeks. Preliminary analysis shows that males who had busier days at work, on average, also endorsed a greater number of upper respiratory infection symptoms. Additionally, males who reported lower perceived job security and less supervisor support were sick with upper respiratory infections on more days across the study than were those of greater job security, with greater job security and supervisor support. So those are the big findings here. And among females, endorsing more busy days was associated with a greater endorsement of upper respiratory infection symptoms. So amongst men, it's your job security. It's the amount of support you have. And if you have low job security and low support, you're going to be sick. And among females, it wasn't really necessarily about job security and support. It was more about how busy you were, or how busy these females were, whether at work or at home. So if you're, you know, raising a child or raising children, and you're working full time, and you can't get enough sleep, and maybe your significant other is not helping as much as you would want him or her to be helping, then that could lead to upper respiratory and common cold symptoms. But once again, we don't know, when these data were taken. Was it summer? Was it winter? Makes a big difference. These findings expand our understanding of the links between job stress and immune functioning by elucidating effects on a clinically relevant health outcome. So this is basically the take-home point. This is what the study did. It helped us understand the link between stress and immune function. And that's it. And so based on this abstract, I will decide, do I want to read this study? Chances, I would be interested. It's kind of my interest, right? It's like health clinical stuff is my main interest. And so it looks like something I'd be interested in reading about. I might have problems with it, and if I were a reviewer for this paper, and I had to give like a critique of the manuscript, I would probably have issues with it. But that's normal. My peers have issues with things that I submit, some more than others. Some people are just, they'll bludgeon you over the head when they review your paper, when they do a peer review. Other people are a little nicer, but everyone has issues with manuscripts. That's the whole process of peer review. So, but if I'm just a casual reader, looks interesting. I read the abstract. I'm going to get the article and I'll skim through the article and see if I can find something that might be relevant to my own research. And that's what you were supposed to be doing during the introduction. Finding these articles, reading through the abstracts, and then determining whether they were worth looking at or not. And that's a laborious process. Obviously, you're only doing a very small scale version of it. But if you were writing a paper that you were publishing, you would need to then spend tons and tons of time, finding articles, reading abstracts, and reading whole articles and determining if you're going to use these articles or not in your introduction. So that's basically how you write the abstract. And that's a challenging thing to do, is writing an abstract. It's hard to write a good abstract, so do your best. Now, for the references, most of you are going to be doing journal articles. So either journal articles in print or journal articles online. And if they're online, they have something called the DOI, a digital object identifier, and you generally list that DOI at the end. So you see the structure. You have author, last name, comma, first name, middle initial, parentheses, year published, title of article, period, then title of the journal article title in italics, comma, the volume in italics. If there's an issue number, it's in parentheses, comma, the page range, non-italics. And then at the end here, you have this digital object identifier. You'll see it in the references. Now, you could write all of your references this way and then put them in alphabetical order by author last name. However, there's an easier way to do it, and that's through Google Scholar. So let's just take this. Let's take one of these journal articles here. I'll take this one here, D. Abreu. And go into Google Scholar, find the article. So I put the author's. I want to see what article this is. I have no idea what article this is, but this is the author, D. Abreu, 2001. Let's see if I can find the article that is referenced in the instructions here. There's a whole bunch of D. Abreu, 2001. This one is the role of media literacy, so I may have to copy more of this. So you have the article titles, though, so you could just copy and paste the article titles that you're using. So whatever you're using in your paper has to be in your reference page. So find the article title, copy, paste it, and put it into Google Scholar. So I'm going to put the whole thing here. Okay, and so here's the citation. Now, there's no access to the entire article here. Not everything's available in Google Scholar. It doesn't matter. So even if your article you got through PsycInfo or PsycArticles or PubMed or whatever, one of those online library databases, if you just put the title and the author into Google Scholar, you can get the citation. So even though Google Scholar here doesn't have this article, so I have no access. I don't even have access to the abstract for whatever reason. They do have the citation. So you go to these quotes here. It says cite. And now you have all the different citations. And we're APA. So all you have to do is go to APA, copy it, and then go to your Word document. So let's say I'm doing references. Now references should be at the end. Right? I'll put the word references like that. And I just paste it in. Now you need to do a little formatting here. So most of this is correct. The one thing you have to do is you always have to indent the second or subsequent lines of each reference entry. So this second line has to be indented inwards. So I could just cut, indent like that, and paste, and you're done. You're done with that reference. And then you move on to the next one. So if I want to find something else, let's say I'm looking at COVID or mask wearing and attachment style, because that's one thing we looked at, right? Okay, and I find one here about mask wearing and attachment style. These people are very big attachment researchers. 2021. It's probably very interesting. I can read if I click on this, I can read the abstract here. People that were high in attachment anxiety were more likely to behave as sentinels. So if they had high attachment anxiety, they warned their loved ones to engage in practices. So they were kind of like the enforcers. They were getting on everybody, like wear your mask, don't go there, socially distance yourself. So they were on top of things. Well, why? Because they're worried about their loved ones. These people that are high in attachment related anxiety, they tend to be clingy. And so they're very worried about their loved ones. And so they're going to be like the enforcers. They're going to be really strict with them and make sure that they take all the precautions. And if you're high in attachment avoidance, you tend to be kind of distant. You're not really close. You have more distant relationships with your loved ones. You kind of have your own space. And these people are less likely to be enforcers. Doesn't mean they don't care. It just means they weren't so anxious about telling people wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands. And I'm sure, you know, you know someone like this, or you are like this, or you have family members like this that are the ones that are like, don't go there, stay outside, socially distance, and that's good practice. I mean, that's a safe behavior. But some people are really, you know, watching and monitoring and really getting on people's cases. So this is insecure attachment may influence whether it's avoidant or anxiety, people's willingness to protect themselves and others during the pandemic. So attachment plays a role in how you act during the pandemic. That's an interesting article. I probably would want to read this. I probably will read this at some point when I have a little more free time. Now, if I want to cite this, I'm going to use if I use this article in the introduction, I want to cite it. So this is the article here. I go down to this quote. It says cite, these little quotes, and I go to APA, just copy it, go into my reference list if I'm using it, paste it, and then all I have to do is cut and paste the second and subsequent lines, make sure it's double spaced, and obviously you want to put it in alphabetical order so D comes before L. So you want to put all this in alphabetical order by author last name. And how many references you have, 5, 10 references, you should have at least 5. So make sure you have at least 5 entries here. And that's it. And then your reference page is done. And so that's all there is to it. You don't have to write out all your references. Now, there's a lot of automated reference and bibliography apps. The most popular one is called RefWorks, where you can save your articles and then the program will actually generate the citation list for you. So you have all your articles in like one spot, and then it automatically generates the citation list. That's nice. RefWorks is pretty big. It's well known. Um, you have to pay for it. I do not think CUNY has access to RefWorks, but although I may be wrong about that. I do not use RefWorks on a regular basis, but I know colleagues that do use RefWorks. Well, there's other sites um, that are free that'll sort of manage your references and manage your citation list and your reference page. So, but the easiest way to do it with a few references like this is just go into Google Scholar, hit the cite button, hit APA, and then just format it by indenting the second and subsequent line. So every line after the first has to be indented like this one. So if you have 3 lines, the third line would have to be under the second line. It had to be indented. And that's all you have to do. So the hardest part of this is doing the abstract. The references should not take you very long. It'll take you like 10 minutes by just Google Scholar, copy and paste. And then the title page will take 5 minutes. And then you're going to have to spend a little time on the abstract. And then save it all. So titles first, abstract, and then references. Submit that as a PDF file by next week. And then that's it. And I'll get you feedback right away. And you should be working on the revisions for the other sections of the paper that you've gotten feedback from. And you'll be ready to submit the final paper all together in the correct order. So the final paper is going to be title, abstract, intro, method, results, discussion, references. So all those sections, the results you just have to copy and paste. I've done the results section for you. All you have to do is copy and paste it into your final paper. You don't have to touch the results section. But all the other sections you've submitted rough drafts, you've gotten feedback, you need to revise them for the final paper submission. Then you're going to submit the final paper as a PDF file with all the sections, including the results section that I wrote, all those sections together. And you'll have a grade for the final paper, and that'll be half of your paper grade. And you'll have a grade for the rough drafts, and the rough drafts are half of your paper grade. And that's it. If you have any questions, email me, come to my office hours, make an appointment for my office hours. I'll be happy to talk to you. I'll be happy to answer your emails. And pretty simple assignment. I don't think it's that difficult. It just takes a little time for the abstract. Other than that, should be good. So hopefully that helps, and I'll see you online soon.